Have you ever seen a child's smile fade because of the people who were supposed to love him the most? What happened to little Ethan that day will break your heart. But wait till you see how karma turned the tables. Before we begin, make sure to hit the like button and subscribe to Kindness Tales Live, where true emotions meet powerful life lessons. It was supposed to be the happiest day of Ethan's young life. His 8th birthday. Balloons floated in the living room. A big chocolate cake sat proudly on the table, and his mother, Sarah, had worked tirelessly to make the evening special. She'd invited her parents, hoping to bridge a gap that had grown over the years. Sarah's parents, Mr. and Mrs. Reynolds, had always been proud, traditional, and quick to judge. They loved their daughter but never quite approved of her life choices, especially after she married Daniel, a man from a modest background who never quite met their high standards. When the doorbell rang, Sarah's heart raced with hope. She wanted peace, a family reunion that might heal old wounds. Ethan ran to the door, his small hands gripping the handle with excitement. "Grandma! Grandpa!" he shouted, his eyes lighting up like candles. But the warmth he expected never came. Mr. Reynolds brushed past him without even a glance, his expensive cologne filling the air like cold perfume. Mrs. Reynolds smiled politely at Sarah, her lips tight and eyes already scanning the room for flaws. "Oh, still in this little house?" she muttered. Sarah forced a smile. "We've made it cozy," she said softly, trying not to let her disappointment show. Ethan tugged on his grandma's sleeve. "Grandma, I drew this for you." He handed her a colorful crayon drawing of the family, himself, his mom, dad, and grandparents holding hands under a bright sun. Mrs. Reynolds looked at it for a moment, her eyebrows lifting. "Oh, how sweet," she said with a tone that wasn't sweet at all. She placed it on the table without another glance. Daniel came forward with a polite smile. "Good to see you both again. Please have a seat." But Mr. Reynolds' eyes fell on Daniel's shirt, slightly worn but clean. "Still can't afford a proper job, I see," he said coldly. The words sliced through the air like glass. Sarah froze. Ethan's eyes darted between his grandpa and dad, confused. "Grandpa, Daddy works very hard," he said innocently. But instead of softening, Mr. Reynolds chuckled. "Oh, I'm sure he does. Someone has to pay for all these balloons." The laughter that followed wasn't kind. It was heavy, uncomfortable, and wrong. Sarah felt her stomach twist. "Dad, please, not today. It's Ethan's birthday." But the humiliation didn't stop there. When it came time to cut the cake, Ethan proudly stood at the center wearing a paper crown. "Make a wish, sweetheart," Sarah whispered. Ethan closed his eyes. "I wish Grandpa and Grandma would like Daddy." The wish was innocent, but life that day wasn't. As everyone clapped, Mrs. Reynolds leaned toward her husband. Imagine if Sarah had married someone successful. Poor boy wouldn't be celebrating in this tiny kitchen. The words weren't meant for Ethan to hear, but he did. His smile faded, and his small hands trembled as he held the knife. The candles flickered, reflecting his heartbreak. Sarah saw it, the change in her son's eyes, and something inside her broke. She took the knife gently from his hands and looked directly at her parents. "Enough," she said firmly, her voice trembling with both pain and strength. "You don't get to ruin this for him." Mr. Reynolds' face hardened. "Don't talk to us like that, young lady. We raised you better." "No," Sarah replied, tears glistening in her eyes. "You raised me to care what people think. But I'm raising him to care how people feel." The room went silent. For the first time, the air wasn't filled with judgment. It was filled with truth. Ethan quietly left the table, slipping away to his room, clutching the drawing his grandmother had dismissed. Sarah watched him go, her heart aching. When she turned back, her parents sat speechless. The party was over, but something far deeper had begun, a storm of consequences they didn't yet see coming. They say words can break bones, but sometimes they break something even deeper, a child's spirit. What Ethan went through that night would change his mother forever. Before we continue, please take a second to like this video and subscribe to Kindness Tales Live for more stories that touch your heart and awaken your soul. That night, the balloons had lost their cheer, and the flickering candles on the kitchen counter burned out one by one, just like Sarah's hopes. The living room was silent except for the faint hum of the refrigerator and the sound of Daniel washing dishes in the sink. Ethan's laughter, The one that once filled their home like sunshine had vanished. Sarah quietly walked toward her son's bedroom. The door was slightly ajar, and through the crack she saw him sitting on the bed, hugging his little stuffed bear. The paper crown from the party was crushed beside him. His eyes, normally bright with curiosity, now shimmered with silent tears. She entered slowly. "Hey, birthday boy," she whispered, sitting beside him. He didn't look up. "Mommy, did I do something wrong?" His voice was small, trembling. Her heart shattered. "Oh, baby, no. You didn't do anything wrong." "Then why don't Grandma and Grandpa like Daddy? They said we're poor. Does that mean we're bad people?" Sarah felt a lump in her throat. How do you explain adult cruelty to a child so pure? She wrapped him in her arms, pressing her cheek against his hair. "Listen to me, Ethan. Being rich doesn't make someone good, and being poor doesn't make someone bad. What matters is your heart. You and Daddy, you both have the kindest hearts I've ever known." Ethan nodded slowly, but his eyes still carried sadness. "I just wanted them to be proud of me," he whispered. Sarah closed her eyes. "One day they will see, sweetheart. But until then, you keep being you." Later that night, when Ethan finally drifted to sleep, Sarah went to the kitchen where Daniel sat at the table, staring into an empty cup of coffee. His shoulders were tense, his face blank, but his silence screamed louder than words. "I'm sorry," Sarah said softly, taking the seat across from him. Daniel looked up, his eyes tired. "For what? You didn't say those things." "No, but they're my parents, and they humiliated you and Ethan in our own home. I can't forgive them for that." Daniel sighed. "They're just stuck in their old ways, Sarah. People like them think money is everything, but I don't care what they think. What hurts is how Ethan looked at me after." Sarah reached for his hand. "He loves you. Don't ever doubt that." He nodded, forcing a small smile. "I know, I just wish I could give him more. Maybe if I made more money, had a bigger house." She squeezed his hand tightly. "Stop, don't you ever think that way. You give him love, laughter, security, everything a child truly needs. They might have money, but they don't have what we have." Daniel's eyes softened. "You always know what to say." But Sarah didn't feel strong. That night, when she finally lay down beside her sleeping son, she stared at the ceiling, her mind spinning. She remembered how her parents once treated her the same way. How every choice she made was criticized. Every dream she chased was not good enough. She had thought having Ethan would soften their hearts, make them see what love really meant. But they hadn't changed. And now they had hurt her son, the one person she swore to protect from the pain she once knew. The next morning, Ethan avoided talking about the party. He just quietly packed his school bag and left for class. Sarah stood at the window watching him go, her heart heavy but her resolve hardening. When she returned inside, she saw the drawing still lying on the table, the one Ethan had given his grandmother. The colors were bright, but something about it felt painfully ironic now. A happy family that didn't really exist. She picked it up and whispered, "They'll see, my love. They'll see what they've done." That day, she made a silent promise to protect Ethan's heart, even if it meant standing against her own blood. What Sarah didn't know was that her parents were already planning another visit, this time not to apologize, but to deliver another blow that would test the limits of her patience and love. When people don't learn from the pain they caused, life finds a way to teach them. What Sarah's parents did next would cross every line, but it also became the moment when karma began to stir. Before we begin, hit that like button and subscribe to Kindness Tales Live, where every story shows how love always wins in the end. It had been a week since Ethan's birthday, 7 long days of silence between Sarah and her parents. Not a call, not a message, not even an apology. Sarah tried to push the hurt away and focus on her family. She cooked Ethan's favorite meals, helped him with homework, and shared small, happy moments with Daniel. But deep inside, she knew the wound hadn't healed. Then on a Sunday morning, a knock came at the door. Sarah hesitated. Through the window, she saw her parents' familiar car parked in the driveway. Her heart sank. She wasn't ready, but she also knew running from confrontation would only make it worse. She opened the door, her tone cold but polite. "Mom, Dad." Mrs. Reynolds gave a forced smile. "We thought we'd stop by." "You didn't call." Sarah stepped aside. Maybe because I was waiting for an apology. Her father frowned. Apology for what? Speaking the truth? Sarah, we were only being honest. Daniel, who had been reading the newspaper in the living room, stood up. His jaw tightened, but he said nothing. He didn't want another fight in front of Ethan. Mr. Reynolds glanced around the house again, unimpressed. Still the same old place. Sarah, when will you realize you deserve better than this? I have better, she replied sharply. I have a husband who loves me and a son who brings me joy. That's more than money can ever buy. Her father scoffed. Love doesn't pay bills, my dear. At that moment, Ethan walked in from his room holding his toy airplane. Grandpa, he said excitedly, still hopeful. Mr. Reynolds' face softened for a second, then hardened again. Ethan, shouldn't you be in school today? It's Sunday, Ethan said with confusion. Oh, Mr. Reynolds replied dismissively, sitting down as if he couldn't be bothered to care. Mrs. Reynolds looked at her grandson with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Ethan, we brought you something. She pulled out a small wrapped box. Go ahead, open it. Ethan unwrapped it eagerly, only to find an expensive toy robot gleaming and shiny. His face lit up, but before he could say thank you, his grandmother added coldly, Now you can play with something real, not those cheap toys your parents buy. The words hit Sarah like a slap. Ethan's smile faltered. He looked up at his mom, unsure what to say. Sarah's voice trembled with anger. Mom, why would you say that? He doesn't care about price tags. Mrs. Reynolds waved her off. I'm just saying the truth. Maybe it's time you stop pretending this life is enough for you. Daniel's patience snapped. Enough, he said sharply. You come into our home, insult my wife and my son, and call it honesty? You may be her parents, but that doesn't give you the right to humiliate us. Mr. Reynolds stood, face red with pride. Don't raise your voice at me, boy. You're lucky we even visit. Sarah stepped between them. Her voice shook, but her words were strong. You know what? Maybe you shouldn't anymore. If visiting means breaking my family apart, then stay away. There was silence. Heavy, deafening silence. Ethan, clutching his toy robot, looked between the adults, his eyes filling with tears. Please don't fight, he whispered. Sarah turned to her parents, her voice breaking. You've done enough damage. I begged for your acceptance for years, and I kept hoping you'd change. For me, for Ethan. But now I see that your pride means more to you than love ever will. Mrs. Reynolds looked shocked. Sarah. No, Mom, she said, tears rolling down her face. Don't. You humiliated my son in his own home. You made him feel small, and that's something a grandparent should never do. Her parents stared at her, speechless. Finally, Mr. Reynolds muttered, You'll regret cutting us off. Maybe, Sarah said softly, but I'll never regret protecting my child. They left without another word. The sound of the door closing echoed through the house like thunder. Daniel put his arm around Sarah, and Ethan buried his face in her dress. Mommy, are they gone? He whispered. Yes, sweetheart, and we're going to be okay. That night, Sarah couldn't sleep. She kept replaying every word, every look of disappointment on her parents' faces. She felt both pain and relief. Pain for losing them, relief for finally standing up. But what Sarah didn't know was that this storm wasn't over. Her parents' pride wouldn't let them walk away quietly. The next time they crossed paths, the truth about their own lives would come crashing down, and for once they would be the ones humiliated. They say pride blinds the heart and deafens the soul. But when the truth knocks, even the proudest must listen. What happened next to Sarah's parents proved that life always finds a way to balance the scales. Before we begin, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to Kindness Tales Live, where every story reminds us that kindness is the strongest weapon of all. It had been 3 months since Sarah cut ties with her parents. In those 3 months, something unexpected had changed, not in Sarah's home, but in her parents'. Mr. Reynolds, once a successful businessman, had begun facing financial trouble. His company, once thriving, was collapsing under debt. He had made a risky investment, convinced of his own brilliance, and refused to listen when others warned him. The market crashed, and within weeks everything he built started crumbling. Mrs. Reynolds tried to hold the family together, but her pride wouldn't allow her to admit they were struggling. She continued attending social gatherings, pretending everything was fine even as bills piled up. One evening, after yet another meeting with angry investors, Mr. Reynolds came home pale and trembling. "We've lost almost everything," he said quietly, sinking into the couch. "The bank's freezing our accounts. The house might be next." Mrs. Reynolds stared in disbelief. "That's impossible. We've always been," he cut her off bitterly. "We were always lucky, not invincible." For the first time, silence filled their mansion, not the peaceful kind, but the kind that comes when life forces humility. As weeks passed, their world grew smaller. The fancy car was sold, the expensive jewelry pawned, friends who once praised them disappeared. The same people who once admired their wealth now avoided their calls. Mrs. Reynolds sat by the window one night, tears quietly falling. Maybe we should call Sarah," she whispered. Mr. Reynolds shook his head stubbornly. "No, we'll fix this ourselves." But they didn't. Things got worse. The house was repossessed. They had to move into a modest apartment on the edge of town. For the first time, the woman who once looked down on others had to live among people she once called beneath her. One afternoon, Mrs. Reynolds walked to the grocery store, clutching a list and counting coins in her purse. Every step felt heavy with shame. She saw other mothers shopping for their children, smiling, chatting, happy. But she felt none of it. She missed Sarah. She missed Ethan. She stopped by a small park on the way back, tears threatening to fall. And that's when she saw something that made her heart ache. Across the street, on a playground, a group of children were laughing around a boy flying a homemade kite. His laughter rang through the air, pure and joyful. That boy was Ethan. He looked taller now, more confident, running with Daniel beside him, both smiling from ear to ear. Sarah sat on a bench nearby, cheering them on. Mrs. Reynolds froze, her groceries trembling in her hands. For a moment she wanted to run to them, to hug them, to say sorry. But guilt rooted her to the ground. She remembered the birthday, the cruel words, the way Ethan's little face fell when she dismissed his drawing. Daniel noticed her first. He stopped mid-laugh, his expression tightening. Sarah followed his gaze and went still. Their eyes met, mother and daughter separated by pride and pain. Mrs. Reynolds felt tears slide down her face. She wanted to cross the street, but she couldn't find the courage. She turned away, heart aching, groceries forgotten. That night, she told her husband what she saw. "They looked happy, Tom, genuinely happy. We used to think they were beneath us, but they have everything we don't anymore. Love, peace, and each other." Mr. Reynolds didn't respond at first. He just stared at the floor. Then he said quietly, "Maybe we were wrong." It was the first time he had ever said those words in his life. Days later, something happened that finally broke through his pride. He was walking home from a job interview, one that didn't go well, when he slipped on the icy sidewalk. A stranger rushed to help him up, steadying his arm. "Careful, sir," the man said kindly. "You okay?" Mr. Reynolds looked up and froze. The man helping him was Daniel. Neither spoke for a moment. Daniel's eyes were calm, compassionate. He didn't mock him or walk away. He simply said, "Let me help you." Mr. Reynolds swallowed hard, shame washing over him. "I don't deserve your help," he said hoarsely. Daniel shook his head. "No one deserves to fall alone." That one sentence broke him. The proud man who once sneered at others now stood trembling, eyes wet, whispering, "I was wrong. About everything." Sometimes the deepest pain can lead to the most beautiful forgiveness. What Sarah and Ethan did next will remind you that no matter how broken a family becomes, love can still find its way back. Before we begin, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to Kindness Tales Live, where every story shines a light on the power of kindness and second chances. After that cold winter afternoon, Daniel came home with a heavy heart. He told Sarah everything, how he had found her father on the ground, how he helped him up, and how the old man had whispered an apology through tears. Sarah sat in silence for a long moment, staring at her hands. Part of her heart wanted to forgive. Another part remembered every cruel word, every moment her parents made her feel small, every tear Ethan had shed because of them. "Do you think they've really changed?" she finally asked. Daniel nodded softly. "I saw it in his eyes. He's not the same man anymore. Sometimes losing everything opens your eyes to what truly matters. That night, Sarah couldn't sleep. She got up quietly, walked into Ethan's room and watched her son sleeping peacefully, his little hand still clutching his favorite stuffed bear. She smiled sadly, remembering that painful birthday, the one that had left scars on both their hearts. Maybe it was time to heal those scars. The next morning, Sarah called her mother for the first time in months. The phone rang longer than she expected. When Mrs. Reynolds finally answered, her voice was shaky, uncertain. "Sarah?" "Yes, Mom, it's me." There was a pause. Then a soft sob. "Oh, Sarah, I didn't think you'd ever call. I'm so sorry, sweetheart. We were cruel. We were blind. We've lost everything, and now we finally see what we truly threw away." Sarah's eyes filled with tears. "You didn't just lose things, Mom. You lost people. You lost moments. You lost love that was waiting for you every day, and you didn't even see it." "I know," Mrs. Reynolds whispered. "And if you never forgive us, I'll understand. But please, can we see Ethan again? I miss him. I miss you." Sarah took a shaky breath. "Come by this Sunday. We'll see how it goes." When Sunday arrived, Sarah was nervous. She wanted the meeting to go well, but she also wanted her parents to understand that forgiveness doesn't erase pain. It heals through truth. When the doorbell rang, Ethan ran toward it, his heart torn between excitement and fear. Sarah opened the door. Her parents stood there, no fancy clothes, no jewelry, no arrogance. Just two humbled, aging faces filled with regret. Mrs. Reynolds clutched a small photo album to her chest. Mr. Reynolds held a box wrapped in plain brown paper. Ethan looked up uncertainly. "Grandma? Grandpa?" Mrs. Reynolds knelt down, tears streaming down her cheeks. "Oh, sweetheart, I am so sorry for what we said to you. You did nothing wrong. You are the kindest, most wonderful boy, and we were too blind to see it." Ethan hesitated, then slowly walked into her arms. She hugged him tightly, her heart breaking and mending all at once. Mr. Reynolds stepped forward next, looking at Daniel. "I owe you more than words, son. You helped me when I didn't deserve it. I judged you without ever knowing your worth. You're a better man than I ever was." Daniel extended his hand, but Mr. Reynolds pulled him into an embrace instead. "Thank you," he whispered. Sarah stood watching them, tears glistening in her eyes. "I never thought I'd see this day," she said softly. Her father looked at her with trembling lips. "You raised that boy right, Sarah. You raised him better than we raised you. You taught him love, and now you're teaching us too." Sarah smiled faintly. "It's never too late to learn." They all sat together in the living room that afternoon, the same place where months ago pain had shattered their bond. But this time there was warmth, laughter, healing. Mrs. Reynolds opened the small box she had brought. Inside was Ethan's crayon drawing, the one she had once dismissed and left behind. It was framed now, the colors preserved behind glass. "I kept it," she said softly. "I found it the day we packed up the old house. I realized this drawing was everything we didn't understand: love, family, and togetherness." Ethan smiled shyly. "Do you like it now?" Mrs. Reynolds hugged him tighter. "I love it more than anything." As the sun set through the window, painting the room in shades of gold, Sarah looked around at her family, broken once, but now beginning to mend. She realized forgiveness didn't mean forgetting the past. It meant choosing not to live in it anymore. When love leads and pride fades, miracles happen. Sarah's family learned that no amount of money or status could ever replace kindness, humility, and love. If this story touched your heart, make sure to like this video, subscribe to Kindness Tales Live, and share it with someone who believes in second chances. Because sometimes forgiveness isn't just for others, it's for ourselves.